What are the Celtics going to do about the backup big situation? It's the hot topic right now in the first week of July. Who's going to back up Robert Williams and Al Horford? Will the Celtics change their starting lineup? Should they do this now or wait to add a big? We're going to talk about that all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine. Very much appreciate you doing that, taking time to listen to this show, which I'm still doing 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We're always finding something to talk about, continuing the conversation about the Boston Celtics. So if you're new to the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, however you listen. This show exists there. Even on YouTube, you can watch the show on YouTube whenever you want. If you watch the show there, like it, comment, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up, hit all the buttons that you're supposed to hit and feed that algorithm for me. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, and I was one of the media voters for the Celtics 75th anniversary team. Today, we're going to answer, I think, one of the more common questions at this point, and I'll bring in my good buddy, Tom Westerholm of the Underscore Crew, Tom Underscore NBA. What's going on, Tom?
Not much, man. Just this time of year is so funny because, like, I think we talked about this yesterday, but like the interest is so high and the content just can't quite keep up with it sometimes.
Yeah. You know, it's fun. Like right now, the Celtics are preparing for Summer League, so no media availability today on Wednesday, so media will be held on Thursday. So the Friday show will include some of that. I have some other stuff up my sleeve for the Friday show as well. But today it's just, all right, let's figure out what people are talking about. And the one thing that people are talking about is the backup big situation. So the Celtics have put together, I think everybody agrees, a really good team. The starting five is great. It was statistically great, statistically the best starting five. They've added Malcolm Brogdon, Danilo Gallinari to the bench. That should be made official hopefully soon. And now everybody's like, okay, well, hey, we've got the starting five. The bench goes, you got a couple of good players already in Grant Williams and Derek White. You've added a couple of really good players. There's one more thing, one more guy. It's that backup big. Who's it going to be? And I think what we've entered right now, Tom, is hey, so what do you think about Player X segment of July? Because I think a lot of people are like, hey, I see this guy in Summer League, or hey, I see this guy here or there. And well, what do you think? What do you think about this guy? So where do you think, Tom, the Celtics stand as far as the backup big? Do you see the need for it right now? What's your kind of take here, first week of July, where the Celtics stand with this?
Well, look, I think the Celtics have, three potential all-star bigs, right? You got Al Horford, who's been an all-star. You got Robert Williams, who could be an all-star. And you have Luke Cornett. Yeah. So I think we're good. I think they're good, man. I don't see where else this could need to go. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think I think there's genuinely I think there's two ways the Celtics can go with this, right? I think that they can go try to get somebody who's out there right now who I don't think would play much, who I don't think would be. I mean, you kind of look at the center crop that's out there right now, and it's like, yeah, like it's that
free agency, nothing. There's nobody.
Yeah, it's that. It's pretty dead. And of course, there could be guys that that they still have trade exceptions. They still have options that way. they could go out and try to acquire somebody. So, I mean, that's certainly still in the cards. I think the other thing to kind of keep an eye on is, the Celtics now have all of this depth at combo guard, right? They have these guys who could slot in as starters. Malcolm Brogdon could be a starter. Derek White could be a starter. You never know what the Celtics want to do with Al Horford. Do they want to try? I know they've kind of hinted and sort of projected that they want to keep the same starting five, but
Yep.
Horford is getting a little older, and I think one thing we're learning is that the Celtics justifiably and correctly really value him and would like to keep him around as long as possible to kind of deal with some of the behemoths that they have to try to defend in the Eastern Conference. So I think, trying to keep him healthy, trying to keep his minutes down. And even if you're not taking him out of the starting lineup because of a performance issue, just purely from a rest and sort of continuity issue, I think that's plausible as well. But to me, I think if I'm the Celtics, I'm still looking at the market and trying to find that backup big so that you can keep the starting lineup intact. Starting lineup is so good. The whole point of going out and getting all these guards was to add depth. And as soon as you start messing with that depth, then it's like, well, are they going to be right back to square one? So to me, I think the best move is to, just kind of poke around, see what shakes free. It doesn't need to be a superstar. It doesn't need to be, a guy who you would even look at as a starter, right? It can literally just be the backup big man.
Sure. Yeah.
And that shouldn't be that hard to acquire, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. So my feeling right now is that I don't know that the Celtics make another move this summer. I feel like they've got 11 more days of Fournier TPE, $17+ million. So my feeling right now is Brad is kind of like at a standstill. I'm gonna guess that the owners are like, hey, look, yes, you can spend money because you got Malcolm Brogdon, you got Gallinari, you're spending probably percentage-wise deeper into the tax than they've spent under this ownership group. But I'm sure they're like, okay, we're still not the Warriors here. We don't own the Garden. The Warriors own their building. All of the stuff that I've said for a million times. I don't think the Celtics are going to spend that deep into the tax, with one exception, and that's if Kevin Durant gets traded in the next 11 days and the Celtics have this TPE sitting here, and by a function of that trade, it's like it's a deal with the Suns or with one of these teams that needs to get a third team involved. I'm sure the Celtics will sniff around to see if they can maybe sneak a good player that it's like, hey, look, we're not in the market necessarily for one of these guys, but a $6 million guy, a $7 million guy, a $10 million guy that's like on a great contract. That's one of those, I can't believe Phoenix or Team X has to get rid of this guy.
Right.
I feel like Boston might be like, all right, we'll spend because of this, because by adding that guy, it's like, oh crap, Boston is now amazingly good. I think that's what the Celtics are waiting for. Of course, there's obviously the potential for minimum contracts. Minimum contracts are calculated differently, whatever. So if they can find a minimum guy, but I don't think any of the minimum guys that are out there are worth even kicking the tires on. So I think the Celtics scan and see if there's a place to be opportunistic, but you do go into the season with Luke Cornett as your backup, and you say, all right, look, how does this look? How does it look with Rob and Al? How much rest do they really need? Let's take October, November, beginning of December, and just get a sense. How bad is it with Luke Cornett? And knowing that this is still a team that's good enough to get through those first couple of months probably not like the last year's team. They'll probably still be really good and rack up wins. But then December 15th rolls around. The restrictions on the newly signed guys lifts. The Celtics have other TPEs at their disposal. They can at that point in December say, all right, we thought Luke Cornett might be just good enough, but he's not good enough. We thought that Al Horford might look better, but he's looking his age more. I think they will take it into the season and then see where the other maybe not so great fits are and try to make a deal at that point.
I think that's probably I mean, it certainly sounds like the wisest course of action, right? Because like,
of course it does.
I retract everything. No, but it like, but the thing about this Celtics team, right, is that like, I think where you're at right now, like caution is, I think, the best, move in terms of going forward, because like this team is like, it's almost built
So
a little
close.
bit too perfectly. It's this close, man. And like, you just, I mean, I think about like going out and getting like a Tristan Thompson, and then he comes in and, says a bunch of like stuff that like just makes everybody kind of roll their eyes again. And it's like
that, like I just did.
Exactly like that. Like,
oh my God, you said Tristan Thompson. I had just the Pavlovian response. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, man. Like, imagine him just coming in and starting to talk like, he's like the championship player again. And it's like, it just wouldn't, like, I can't imagine that would go over well on this team. Like, this is a bunch of guys who can do it themselves now, Tristan. They don't need your advice. So, like, I think, yeah, waiting and kind of seeing and seeing what you need. I mean, look, like, we kind of chuckle about Luke Cornett, right? But like, I know that the Celtics, there's members of that, front office that are very high on him, like higher than you would expect them to be on like a guy who is averaging, I just looked at his G League stats. It's like 15 points a game, 6.2 rebounds, but it's like 6.2 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 1.9 blocks, like those, they're G League stats and you can't really trust them, but those are a bunch of things that he can do, right? It's not just, it's like 4.7 assists. That's quite a few for a center. So I think, waiting to see, like take a look at what you have in Cornett. Like you said, if it isn't working after a month, if Horford and Rob are playing too many minutes, or if one of them is hurt and all of a sudden Grant is like lodging a ton of time as like a small ball five, yeah, maybe you got to go out and you got to try to find a backup big man. But there's probably no hurry with this team. This team is very good, and like trying to mess with things too much, might be tinkering too much with a really good thing.
Yep. This is the thing. You don't need to have it done now.
No,
you do not have to have it done now. I know people want it done now.
Yes.
Because now is when all the movement's happening. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. You don't have to have it done now. You get a chance here to taste the stew and figure out what seasoning you need to add. So let's take a second here on that note to tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of cars out there, it is just impossible for that chain auto parts store to have all of the things that you need. So don't waste your time telling that person behind the counter all of the specs for your car when you can just stay at home and enter that into your own computer or on your phone, because you have access to RockAuto.com and their amazing, extensive, easy to navigate catalog for everything your car needs. From complicated stuff, you need a fuel pump. Sure, RockAuto.com has that. Not only that, has multiple tiers of pricing for fuel pumps that you can just choose from to say, hey, this fits my budget, this fits my need. It could be something simple. Motor oil, windshield wipers, same deal. You walk into one of those other places, there's just like 3 windshield wipers in the display case, or one that fits your car. You can get many, many choices at Rock Auto. So head on over to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car, truck, RV, motorcycle. It's all there at rockauto.com. When you do buy something, Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That's how they know we sent you. It's an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at RockAuto.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make Locked On NBA your second listen. I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. We have a lot of fun on Wednesdays, so make sure you check out the Wednesday show if you've missed it. We have rotating hosts all week long, covering the league in depth in a fun, interesting way. So make Locked On NBA your second listen wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, wherever you found Locked On Celtics. Let's continue the conversation here with Tom Westerholm and this whole thing with the backup bigs. And it's an interesting discussion, I think, when we say it doesn't have to be done right away. And I think part of that is what you brought up before, the starting lineup. You can go double big. Absolutely. That starting lineup works. We've seen it work. However, short turnaround and age, two things that I'm worried about with Al Horford. I am worried about that because he is so important to this team.
Yes.
So I want to find a way to make life as easy as possible on him. So does that mean starting him and just subbing him out after 5 or 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and you say, hey, that's 28 minutes a game, that should be fine. And then you rely on Gallinari. That's why you got him. And you get him in, make him sort of like never play those two together. And Gallinari is essentially Al Horford's backup, and you just see how that works. That could work. Or you could play Horford off the bench and use him as a finisher. There are multiple options here. So I think the addition of Brogdon does actually give the Celtics this flexibility where you could go Smart, Brogdon, Jaylen, Jayson, Rob, and you have two ball handler playmakers. Brogdon's a shooter, very easily could be, he's a combo guard anyway, shooting guard. And then you bring Derek White off the bench to continue the ball movement and all of that stuff. No drop off defensively there, and just kind of have that rotation there. I think that's something that could work.
Well, and again, Grant Williams, right? Like that's the other guy that can slot in.
That's right.
Anywhere you need him to. I think it's going to be interesting watching Gallo and Grant and just kind of the ways that the coaching staff subs those guys in around each other, around those bigs. Like those combinations are going to take some time to get used to. And frankly, I mean, that's another argument in favor of waiting, right? Is this is going to take some time to get used to. And it might be good to get at least, a few weeks of a look at, how well does Rob work with Gallo, given that, neither of them is particularly switchable, like, out on the perimeter for pick and rolls and that kind of thing. But Gallo offers all that spacing, does Grant and Horford last year were actually a pretty, if I remember right, they were a pretty mediocre two-man combo. Like, why is that? And was that just fluky, or is that something that, actually, should be examined, for kind of a longer term thing? I think, those are all questions that you can answer, after a few weeks. And after that, because not every backup big man is the same. Maybe you're getting a backup big man who is, super springy because you're hoping to fill in some of those Rob minutes. Maybe you're getting somebody who's, just big and muscular because you just need you just literally need muscle down there. Like there are different types of big men. You can't always predict which is going to be the one that you're going to really feel like you're missing. So, maybe you can go find like a better fit when the season rolls around. So I think, again, this team has a really good roster that has a lot of good pieces in place right now, ready to go. And I think it's probably worth seeing what is the actual missing piece, right? Like what actually is missing from this team before you go out and start spending even more draft assets. Because like we talked about it before, it's fine the Celtics are spending draft assets, but it's because they're doing it to get what we know they need.
Yeah.
Don't spend it on something that you might need as opposed to something that you know you need.
No, absolutely. That's the way the Celtics, I think, should operate. I feel like waiting and looking and saying, you don't know what Grant is adding to his game when he comes, back over the summer. You don't know what Rob is adding to his game. You don't know exactly how Al is going to be impacted. There's a lot of stuff you still don't know
what Luke Cornett is going to
be. You just don't know how impactful all-star Luke Cornett is going to be. Luke Cornett, by the way, is a big dude.
He's huge.
He's large. He's a tall person. He's a very tall person. Yeah, it's funny because he's usually one of the first guys working out because of the way everything is laid out time-wise. And you get to a game, and I get, was at all of these playoff games, and he's among – when I first get to the arena, he's just there. And you just look at him, you're like, man, that dude he's big. Yeah. And you joke because he looks like he's an accountant, but he's a big dude. And look, he can do a little bit of everything. He can shoot. I don't think he's strong enough necessarily to hang with a Joel Embiid, and that's going to be the biggest case, right? Like, who is? But right now, I think people are starting. First of all, you see the hole in the roster. You say, okay, why not go for that guy? And you look up and down the East, and I did the podcast the other day, and I was kind of handicapping the teams, and the Sixers are a team that have the potential to be fighting for one of these top 3 seeds. I think they could be a really good team, which means a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup between these two teams. And if it comes down to, oh boy, the Celtics have to throw Luke Cornett out there against Joel Embiid, then you're like, well, that was a nice run. But I think between now and then they can figure things out. And when we were talking before about the taxes, I really do have to. I am with you. I am with you, the listener, the watcher. I'm all for use the TPE, spend that money. If you find an opportunity to get a big guy in here and he makes $10 million, so what? Just spend the damn money, rich owners, right? Like I think we're all in agreement. However, I also understand that that's probably not going to happen, because if you sign a guy right now making just $2 million, you're paying $7 million in taxes for that guy. So you really do have to understand that, hey, let's just get the $2 million player via trade exception. You're like, that's fine. That's fine. Except for them, they look at it as a $9 million player, and you got to be like, is that really worth it? Is having that guy sitting on the bench costing the team $9 million the answer? And that I think is a huge part of why this team waits, because it's not that they're not entirely willing to spend that tax money, but at this point, whoever you add better be worth it. He's got to be the answer. He's got to be the guy. You got to know we need this type of player. This is the guy. We're going to target him. We're going to get him, and fine, we'll spend the money, but he's the answer.
Right, because it's two things, right? So it's on like it's how whenever there's like a pretty kind of catch-all phrase when people are like, it's not my money, right? Where they're like, the owner's like, when you're like, yeah, it's not my money, the owner's spending like his money, like, so yeah, go out and sign somebody. But it does work the other way too, where you're like, hey, go spend your money, and the owner's like, no. It's like, okay, it does hit both ways, where you don't have to feel bad about going and paying somebody a lot of money, but you also unfortunately do not have ownership over how that money is spent. But I think, to your point though, that's why the Celtics went and got Malcolm Brogdon, right? Because it was such an easy 1-for-1 to be like, oh yeah, that's a guy. That's a guy, and such an easy sell to ownership, right? Like, and I think the Celtics ownership, I think you're right. Like, they are willing to spend. They've been very clear that they are willing to spend for a contender. And when you look at Malcolm Brogdon, you're like, that guy gets the Celtics closer to being a real contender.
Yes.
And that, I think, is going to be the litmus test going forward, because they're not the Warriors. They're not whoever. They're not going to just like spend indiscriminately just because Brad Stevens tells them, hey, I want that guy. Hey, like Brad Stevens, I don't think he can just write a wish list. But I do think that, like, if the Celtics can show, hey, this is a center who would be good off the bench and who would help us in this way, that's when I think you can, start to make a real case to this ownership group. Like, hey, spend your money. Like this is a good one. This is like the Malcolm Brogdon thing.
Yeah. I've got a case for people to spend their money on Built Bars. For the people who made healthy and tasty comes the latest gift for your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what, folks? Your friends at Built had given coconut brownie chunk the Puffs treatment. So now coconut brownie chunk Built Bar is in a marshmallow form, covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. So check it out. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein. It's all delicious, and they're only here for a limited time. So if you want one of these chocolate coconut brownie chunk puffs, you got to go now because they're going to sell out. It's a limited edition drop. Go to built.com. These are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and there are tons of health benefits. So you can eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Of course, you know that they taste amazing. They're guilt-free. And if you've got a craving for something sweet, this is a great way to satisfy that without having like a chocolate bar. If you need a quick, healthy snack, they are an excellent source of protein. Delicious, coconut-rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. They exist. Go get one. Go get to built.com. Order them right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. Locked15 gets you 15% off, and you can use that every single time at built.com. So wrapping up the conversation here about the backup bigs, I think the other thing that we really have to understand is that these are really situational types of players, and you have to understand the situation. The way Ime hopes to use these guys matters in who you're going to pick. You can't just go out and get Dwight Howard because that's just not going to – you can't sit there and be like, that's a big guy, let's go get him or whatever. There are possibilities that somebody shows out in Summer League and Ime and Brad say, hey, that's actually a skill set that we could use. I think a big who has good rim protecting instincts that knows how to make the right play is a little easier to find in that type of setting or G League setting or something like that. Yes. So it's also another reason I think to wait, which is, we're both on team. Let's wait until just December. Let's just see how this works. Another reason why this, I think, supports our case is there are a lot of guys out there trying to hook on. A lot of guys are going to end up in the G League. You can go watch some of these guys just instincts wise. You can say, all right, I like the way this guy moves. I like the way he's anticipating things. Let's poach him. Let's give him a shot. And the other thing is, this can also be a two-way guy. The two-way rules, I think, help the Celtics here because now they can play 50 games, 55 games.
Yeah, it's more for sure.
It's more. The Celtics, they have, I think at this point, 13 spots, 14 spots. So they have at least one or two open spots. You can bring in a guy on a two-way if you're so inclined. If you say let's give a guy a shot, that's a contract that could be converted if they want into one of those open spots. And if it doesn't work, you can just say, okay, didn't work on the two-way. We're going to let you go, hook on with somebody else. So there are other options. There's potentially a Summer League option. There's potentially a G League option that the Celtics can look at as well.
Yeah, it to your point about the two-way, it was actually something I was gonna mention. It feels like Trevion Williams has like a real shot at one of those two-way contracts, like just like a passing big who's 6'10", pretty solidly built. Like the Celtics have done so well with those solidly built guys and just kind of putting them in harm's way and just kind of letting like bigs try to run over them. Like they've done a
Putting
really
them
good
in
job.
harm's way.
I mean, but like, they've done a really good job with some of those guys. And like Trevion Williams feels like, he could be somebody they just take a look at. Cause like you said, like those two-way slots, they're available. They're there for you to use on somebody that you're not sure about, but you're interested in. And I mean, look, maybe Trevion Williams shows out in summer league and he just gets a guaranteed slot. But like, he feels like a guy that if you kind of squint, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it feels like he might catch on.
Yeah, there's certainly something there. Just at first glance, what do the Celtics need, honestly, from this backup big? What do they need? They need a guy offensively. If you can get a guy that can catch the ball in the high post and run a dribble handoff, or set a decent pick and roll, and like he can go and catch him. He has the ability to catch the ball on the roll, and if he sees somebody converging, kick it out.
Yep.
If you have that skill as a big, then you say, okay, offensively, can he run an offense? We know that we're not asking him to shoot threes. We're not asking him to do too much. If you can run a solid pick and roll and then pass off of that, that's huge. If you can run a simple dribble handoff, that's huge. And then on the other end, can you be a part of the defense? That's the biggest part. Can you defend the rim? Can you switch a little bit at all? Can they make do with you on the floor for a 5-minute stretch? And unlike other positions where I don't think you can just pull a point guard or any wing off of a G League team and say, plug and play, I feel like bigs can be sort of poached from the G League and be more effective more immediately.
Yeah, because I mean it's right there in their name, right? It's like they're big, like it's like that's like a major part of their value to a team, and like obviously this, the star bigs are the ones who can do a lot of the other stuff too. But like, when you're going and getting a guard, guards have like these skill sets, right? Where like you might have like a guy who can shoot, or you might have a guy who can, really pass. You might have a guy who can break down a defense or whatever it is. But like, literally part of being a big man is just your physical stature. It just makes it more simple to kind of plug and play in that way. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's easier to pick out a G League guy simply because like truly the only thing, not the only thing, but like one of 3 or 4 things that you need from him is just for him to exist in the right space and just be there, and then you're good.
Right. You're not asking too much, and from there, who knows? I mean, if you get a guy on a 2-way deal, that buys you some time. If he's great, you can convert him. There are options there. Bottom line here, Tom, is that I think everybody, like you and I, are in agreement. You don't have to do it now, and I don't even think you should do it now because you just don't know exactly what you have. I think even if you do it now, considering the crop that's out there, you run the risk of hurting yourself, because if you sign a guy and then you have to cut him and then sign somebody else, that just adds unnecessary money to the tax. And that I know it's the one thing that people hate to hear, but we're speaking in terms of just, this is the reality. I'm sorry that people don't like to hear the tax discussion, and they're paying the tax. They're well into the tax, which makes it even more important for them to be conscious of this. And that's just the reality. If you want to listen to somebody else and tell you that's not a reality, then they're lying to you. This is how the Celtics are operating right now. This is just how it is. So be patient. Understand that the process is there. There's a December 15th date, and there's obviously the trade deadline. And I got to let me call up real quick, because the Celtics have a couple of traded player exceptions that they could still use.
Right.
Obviously, the $17.1 million expires on July 18th. They've got the Juancho Hernan Gomez $6.9 million that expires on January 19th. So there's plenty there. They've got a Dennis Schroeder one for almost 5.9 that expires February 10th. There's plenty of money there. And then a bunch of other like smaller ones that probably will expire, but 6.9 million and 5.9 million are plenty to go out there and use for if somebody realizes like our team, maybe somebody suffered an injury or something like that. We've got to start dumping salary because screw it, we're rebuilding. Yeah. Maybe it's the Portland Trailblazers who are, consistently on the edge of that, or somebody, whatever it is, having those two slots that extend into late January, early February, very easy tools to use to get the guy that you're looking for. And all that matters is that he's on the roster and everybody's comfortable with it heading into the playoffs. That's all that matters. So a little bit of time left. Absolutely. Not enough time left in this podcast, though. Let's wrap this up. We're going to do this at a reasonable time this time.
If there was ever going to be a podcast that we would wrap up at a reasonable time, this is the right one to do it. Like this July 6th, no media availability, no.
We had some good.
Wait, it's not July 6th. Yeah, it is July 6th.
It is July. It's July 6th as we're recording. It's about to flip to July 7th. Yeah. So high quality, Tom. High quality backup big man talk. Passionate, even backup big man talk.
Luke Cornett.
And on that note, goodbye, Tom.
Goodbye, John.
And goodbye to you, but not until you subscribe. Please subscribe to the podcast. Make sure that you get this show dropped into your device every single Monday through Friday, daily. We're the only ones going daily. This Locked On Celtics podcast is your only daily Celtics podcast, here for you to talk Celtics. Everyone else is talking about other sports right now. No one else on the radio, nowhere else. This is the only place to get consistent Celtics talk. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're watching the show on YouTube. Like the show. Hit the thumbs up. Always make sure you hit that thumbs up when we drop a video. And most importantly, share the podcast. Make sure your friends, your family, everybody knows to listen and watch the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.